Ladies and gentlemen, live
Boom.
on air right now. Yes, it is the Farmer Jones boom. Now, Farmer Jones was first on the show just a week ago. He's gotten quite some traction. He's had a channel for a while, but it's blowing up. He's at 7.48 subs. If you missed out on clicking that button earlier, make sure you click it after this show. Welcome to the show, Farmer.
Howdy, Diamond. Yeah, so I was just asking you, so what's your take on the Antifa thing? Uh-oh, it's saying poor connection. Oh, shit.
It's good on my
You
end.
got good video and audio
Yeah,
there?
it's good on my end. And as far as
Okay,
Antifa kind of swelled up during the Occupy movement. Um, so Antifa's been around
okay,
for a decade. Now, what has happened to Antifa
all right,
is what we should discuss. Antifa has been co-opted, in my
okay.
opinion, by larger and larger groups, and they're now being used by the Democratic Party for a political agenda. And that's my take on Antifa. If you want any other nuances, I'd be happy to respond to you what your thoughts are moving forward.
What do you think about the government, we'll call them protection or engagement of them? Because I'll throw some thoughts out for you and for our happy viewers.
Well, what I've seen in the
Oh,
media through my research is that large swaths of Antifa were responsible for the violence as well as the looting. It's not exclusively Antifa, but they may incite the riots and the violence. Now, what happened over the last 3 days is large
right,
groups of these people have been released from jail. They haven't even been charged. And this is under pressure by someone or
in New York.
some entity. This is in other states too. I've seen large releases. And so it's just not New York.
Wow,
So there's something going on. And at the same time, we have dozens of murdered civilians and police officers, none of which are being discussed on the media. So it's very curious what's going on, in my opinion.
right. I agree with you, and I'll tell you my thinking on this. I think these are terror cells that were planted. I think that the day after the incident with Floyd, what did we have? 25 cities exploded into protests, and embedded in those protests happened to be what do we want to call them? The rabble rousers, or what's a better word? Agitators. Okay, the violent, yeah, the agent provocateurs,
You
exactly.
got it.
And they were kind of like trailing. Yeah, and here's what I think. If you look at New York, that stupid law in New York signed in by Cuomo basically says, and I found a video today that I'll put up later and we'll discuss, that felons just get appearance tickets, robbery, burglary, like all of these, the major felonies, they don't even have to make bail. It's unbelievable. And this was Governor Pataki, the ex-governor from a couple of loops back, talking about it and saying how ridiculous it is. So my thinking is this is all part of a setup. That was the setup to make sure when the violence occurs, they just recycle their soldiers. They're not having to bring in reinforcements of 500. They get popped. You just re-release them. So it's an endless churn, as opposed to, hey, we're out of men, right? So we got to send in
Yeah.
reinforcements. This way, it's a perma-churn.
Additionally, there was preemptive releases so that maybe large swaths of criminals, low-level criminals, were actually released during the pandemic onto the streets before this even happened. So they were already pre-releasing
Good point.
these low-level criminals before they started releasing everyone.
Right. Right. And I'm going to smoke. I got to quit, man. I watched that video we did last time, and I was like, Puffmeister. So I'll turn the camera away so nobody will see me spark up.
Well, it's a free country. Now let's talk about the interview you did yesterday with George Webb
Well, hold on.
and
No.
Jeffrey
Wait.
Prather. Okay.
Wait.
Go ahead.
Yeah, wait a second. Let's go back. So I agree. The pre-release I hadn't thought of. But now the COVID thing builds up the rage of the crew, people, everybody being in lockdown, unconstitutionally, illegally based on a propaganda terror campaign of overblown numbers, overblown fear porn, media complicity. And after 3 months, you've got young people, mid people, old people are outraged, and they're slowly unleashing the lockdown. They're removing the house arrest. Okay, so now we get the Floyd thing pops, and guess what? Everybody's got a great excuse to come out and rally. These seems to me it's too obvious an operation. 20 cities, 30 cities, and these guys are out there touring. They're on the road show, you know. But they were terror cells. These guys sprung up simultaneously. It's not like they went from New York to Chicago. They had people flying in from other cities. They're organized. These are tactical military operations with communications, spotters, logistics, and what do we want to say? Whether just we'll call it troop movement, where they're saying the police are here, go there. The whole thing is very organized and engineered. And the media is downplaying it. When Trump says, bring in the National Guard, or he'll implement, what is it, not the Sedition Act. What is it? What was the act he wanted to pull? I'm blanking here. I just came out of the gym.
I don't know.
What was the name of that act he was
You're the expert.
Well, okay, but okay. I'm a functional citizen on occasion, Diamond. So the bottom line is he's not implementing it. But as soon as he said that, mainstream media says, "Oh, these are peaceful things," right? Prior to that, they were violent, and it's like, how come Trump isn't doing anything about it?
Farmer, there's video of CNN standing in front of a burnt out AutoZone saying the protests are generally very calm, and there's literally buildings burning behind this liar. And also, we should touch on the point that it's not just 20 or 30 random cities, because this is definitely part of a plan. It is all in democratically controlled regions. So there is some connection
which is why
to the politics here. So can you speak to the politics?
Exactly. And that's the point. That's why I'm saying it's government supported. They're basically given free rein and selective prosecutions. The New York thing is unbelievable. Who ever heard of riots on Fifth Avenue, smashing Macy's windows? I don't know. Did they wreck Tiffany's? Did they did Gucci? Did they wreck, what was the one they saw? Coach, the Coach bags? All of that. They're smashing in windows. And it's just rampant looting. I mean, unbelievable. And then when they get arrested, they're accusing the police of police brutality. And then these guys just roll back out on the street the same day in an hour, and they're out doing it again. So these are fanatics going out and say, oh, well, we'll do it again. Let's see if they pick me up again. This is an outrage. And then let's not forget about the masks. Let's not forget the masks. COVID. Everybody's got to do face covering. Yeah, so now everybody's got to wear a mask, so that's obscuring their identity. Fits right in. How convenient.
So in general terms, are you
they got cover.
Are you saying that the Democratic Party is now part of a political ruse that is encouraging rioting to make a facade of, let's say, global unrest in the U.S., resulting in an election of a Democrat? Are they doing this to elect the child sniffing, the slightly demented candidate that they're pushing currently?
Right. No, I'm not saying they're doing it. I'm saying there's an actual coup d'etat in effect. It's a slow motion coup. Not only that, it's worldwide. I listened to a great interview last night, and the guy said on it, he said that the UN's website, and I didn't check it, it was UNNWO for New World Order. That's the UN's website. Really? Talk about in your face. So this is a coup. Now they're talking about let's reduce the police force. But I have the question, say, wait a minute, is that real, or is that to get everybody on the right to say, oh yeah, let's beef them up, call up and scream and yell, and then you'll have more police. Now we have a better police state when they back it down, and the New World Order takes over with surveillance, control, and domination. What do you think?
Well, I think that as more people hear about this narrative or potential narrative of what's actually happening, some of the sheep are waking up and they're like, wait a minute, that's not what I want. And so I think that it's not going the way they want it to go, which is why we've seen a multiplicity of false flag type events. being laid out here, and what could possibly be in their toolbox next? That's my question. Because we just came within some of
Well, why don't they
the
start blowing
highest.
things up?
So here's one of the things. Not really. So here's one of the things happening that a lot of people don't know about. Kramer nailed this in an article he posted yesterday, that over $600 billion in wealth redistribution has occurred in the last 8 weeks. This is from the bottom up. So out of
Oh.
people's pensions and savings and 401ks and everything else that the general public has, are being extracted, and all the money is going to the top corporations. So what this results in is that famine, starvation, homelessness in a few months, the likes of which our nation has ever seen. And this would cause you to get a large group of agitated citizens that may form militias. And so I wonder if they're orchestrating this to actually occur.
I don't know that that would trigger them forming militias, but it'll certainly create more dependence on the government, which is that whole communist pitch. Oh, the government has to take care of all these people, and they're stratifying the economy to say you've got the ruling class and the plebes, right? But that's a very interesting point. There was another thing that ties into that. That's really the Wall Street, the cash suck, right? So they put everybody out of work. What do we got? 40 million filed for unemployment. Okay, 2.5 million new jobs last month. Okay. You were saying the redistribution of wealth up. That's a fascinating thought. There was a thought I had in there, but when it comes back, I'll come back to it. But yes, I agree with you. It's a very good point.
Just in terms of the stock market, we've almost hit the highest record levels yesterday. We were within 150 points of the highest level of the stock market ever. And this is while 40 million people are not receiving paychecks. Where is this money coming from? Who's printing it? And the deflation of the dollar before our very lives is happening now. And no one gets it. They just don't get it. When a steak costs $48 for an 8-ounce portion right before the election, people are going to blame Donald Trump. I guarantee it. And it's not his fault.
I don't know. My question is, how much of this is fake wrestling? How much of this is all a setup? When the crazy mayor in Baltimore kicks the National Guard out of their hotel and says, oh, no, you can't do that. I don't understand. How does she have the authority, and how does she do that? What does she do? Call up the hotel and say, kick out the National Guard? What the hell is that? Number one. Number two, how come she isn't charged with, aiding and abetting mayhem? This is a potential major national security issue. So then the question is, when did they pull the permits for this march, or did they not need them in her little city? Another Democrat, right? New York, Democrat. LA, Democrat. All of these Democrat cities. And I wonder if they have a conference call going on. So, Webb, who was the guy I interviewed yesterday, made the argument pretty strongly a few days back that Antifa, their handlers, are the DNC, and it's the Democratic Party. And I think he's right. They're the foot soldiers for the party. And the party really wants to push this into a communist takeover. Now, is this a test? Is this a test run to see how far they push it, where the weak points are, where's the resistance, and how to perfect it for next time? But if you notice, the little video that I caught, at least, of Washington and some of the footage from today, oh, wait a minute, was it Washington? But there was a lot of space between people and a lot of people wearing masks, right? They're COVID masks. So they're coming back to that nonsense. Tell these people to go home and, go back to lockdown, and COVID kind of fell off of the screen. That was no longer the main attraction. Everybody forgot about that while you have riots of thousands of people shoulder to shoulder doing their thing with or without masks, if they're there for coverage or they COVID masks. It's unbelievable. And the complicity of the media is just disgusting. I don't know how to stop it, but it's certainly disturbing. And I think the issue of militias is huge. That has to happen. The only towns and cities really stopping it are those well-armed and organized and coordinated militias or, just armed citizenry coming up where they team together, where you've got, out west, you've got cowboys and bikers all stepping up. And they did the recon and everything else. And they knew when they were coming, they'd walk up and say, hey, what's going on? While they're fully loaded and they've got, 50 or 100 Harleys behind them with big boys on them, also fully armed. And they just kind of whimpered and cowered away and changed their mind about wrecking that town or city or shopping center or whatever.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Imagine
I love
that.
it.
I know. So that's
But
really
that kind of
that's what America's
level.
about. That's what America's about. That's why we have the Second Amendment. That's why we
Yeah,
have the Constitution.
I
We can
agree.
protect our own towns, our own property. We can do it locally. And we don't need these foreign entities that I believe your assessment that they are organized terror cells, and that nothing could be truer than you know what? In my last 10 years of organizing, even at the top level as director for nonprofits, in my research, I found that the number one
Right.
threat to America is domestic terrorism, not a foreign entity. It comes from
Right.
within and it's paid for by people trying to get something.
Right. And evidently there's a large control factor of Soros and other far leftists. And somebody posted on my channel that Hillary or her foundation donated $850 million. Now, I forgot if it was Antifa or was it Black Lives Matter. But I also heard Black Lives Matter seem to be morphing into a different mode. They're talking about, the disruption of the traditional family. It's like almost the feminist movement pitch. Massive corporate donations going to Black Lives Matter, who have their own foundation. So what is this all about? So now you have a tax exempt, so Soros can fund that. And maybe there's a connection between them and Antifa or other terrorist groups. I don't know. I'm watching this kind of unfold. But I do see the goddamn Justice Department not doing anything, right? They made 50 arrests. And why didn't the FBI characterize this group as a terrorist organization 2 years ago? And then we have the other question: are these guys actually classified as a domestic terror organization? Is there legislation that has to do that? I mean, Trump is calling them that, and Barr is suggesting it. But I think in order to have them officially characterized and get that label, there has to be legislation where Congress has to vote and declare them that. I'm not sure how that works, but that's a
Well,
very interesting thought, isn't it?
this is not a new concept. And in my work with the Democratic Party about 8 years ago, working through a nonprofit, this is what happens. All of a sudden, we get $30,000 or $40,000 in a check that comes in from a 501c4. This is a government NGO. We don't know who it is per se. They have a name, and then it comes into our NGO, and now we have $30,000, and then we start a campaign, and some of our campaigns involved regular citizens getting arrested. So then we interview hundreds of regular citizens willing to get arrested for this particular cause. We find people that don't have felonies or warrants and stuff like that. And we then sign a
Right.
contract with them that will bail them out of jail. And all these people volunteer to break the law.
Okay.
So this has been going on for decades. Regular citizens are recruited through funding, get paid, and then break the law to
Right.
get arrested and then get bailed out. So this is not a new thing. They've just taken it to the entire next level, which is direct criminality.
So you're saying the 501c4, so it's a nonprofit, right? So it's
Right.
just not were they nonprofits? So a foundation and nonprofit to nonprofit contributions. Foundations, as you know, have to make contributions to other nonprofits by law, so they have to move their money around. This is why the Clinton Foundation and the Gates Foundation and all of the other foundations, they kind of they live in, what do we want to call it, a parallel universe of nonprofit control. And there's never taxes paid, and they sit and they get together, right? What? It's true. It's true. So that's what you're saying. It came in,
Yeah. Well,
and right,
look, the
comes
majority
to your operation, another nonprofit.
the majority of the money
That's
never gets
fascinating. I
it
didn't
never
know that.
gets anywhere. So 501c4s donate to 501c3s. They pay the salaries and the taxes. Then the 501c3s raise the funds to give the money back to the C4. It's all back and forth. I need money, then I'm going to go raise you money, and here's your check. and it just gets passed back and forth for different
Right.
tactics, for different campaigns, they call it. And what I've seen in the last 4 or 5 days is tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars flowing into Black Lives Matters, other nonprofits from multinational corporations. And to what end is that? You
Right.
know that there is no democracy these days. And so what happens with the almighty dollar is that you're buying a vote for something. And what are we buying the votes for? That's my question. Is it totalitarian state?
Or is it against a democratic state?
Yeah.
We got to remove the democratic state. So everybody's talking martial law. Well, that would certainly be undemocratic. Well, is martial law intended to protect us from the Black Lives Matter or the Antifa crew? Or is it really intended that the Antifa crew is used to trigger the martial law? And then it's like, poof, here we are. I don't know, man. This is not a cool scene by any means. But that's fascinating what you said about, kind of washing the money back and forth. And that's how Soros does it. He's got all of his tax-exempt NGOs, and there they go, a non-governmental organization, right? Fascinating.
Well, and
Wow.
then the worst part is
All right, man.
the majority of the
I
population.
learned something here today. Thank you.
The majority of the population is just walking around blind, and they're waiting for guidance from the mainstream media of all places, which makes us really stuck between a rock
Oh,
and
yeah,
a hard place.
that's horrifying.
So where do we go from here?
Horrifying. I don't know. I want to see how this turns out when night falls up in Washington tonight.
Okay, so
we should put this up tonight, like, 10 o'clock Eastern time. Let me talk about the militias for a second.
Go ahead.
Out west, that can fly. In the East Coast, you have much more populous cities. People don't even think about it. They operate under the presumption that this is a civil society. Law enforcement will handle it. And they really don't get exposed to riots and looting and nightmares like that. So this is really the shock doctrine, right? It's the same thing. First, they were shocked with the COVID. They're locked down. Then they're shocked further with this rioting simultaneously across the country. And now there's a siege on the White House, essentially. If you've been watching up there, people smashing down gates or trying to. And then you've got the extra drama where Trump calls in the National Guard, and then the mayor is fighting that and saying, no, you can't have it. Yet you've got the mayor of New York and you've got the governor of New York who's got these ridiculous laws. What happened to their oath when they took the office that said, I will uphold the laws, right? What happened to that? Not only upholding the Constitution. These people should be summarily arrested and charged with treason. But who's going to do it? Barr? I've got a problem with him. Big problem with him. He does lip service, and he's still doing that deep dive investigation into Epstein's death, purported death, right?
Yeah.
Where was that funeral, by the way? And who was at the funeral? Did we get any coverage on that?
Right.
Did Clinton show up?
Well, it was closed casket, just like George Floyd.
Well, I don't know. So it could be closed casket. There's still a ceremony, right? What was the date? Where did he get buried? Or was he cremated? But now let's look at the whole COVID thing. We know that's a scam. If you ever follow Ole Damagard, he's amazing. I put a link up. Red Pill 78 did a great, like a 2-hour interview last night with him. And I learned a lot from Ole. He did the history of him. It was unbelievable. And he discusses that, and of course, he connects the dots and puts it right in your face so you can't miss it, where you had this Event 201 for the COVID thing as a drill, right? How are we going to control the message, flood the message? How do we make sure we protect the world on the pandemic? Well, the 201, right, the O is actually a graphic that is the globe in orange. So it's really Event 21. Related to Agenda 21, perhaps? Imagine that. And then he points out that it was sponsored by, who was that? Johns Hopkins. And who's punching out that stupid chart with all the deaths? That's Johns Hopkins. Interesting. And it was funded by the Gates Foundation. And who's been out talking, and it's going exactly as they planned in that session, and who's out in front of it but Gates talking about vaccines. Unbelievable. So that's for his profit and the destruction of people. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Bobby Kennedy, has been doing an amazing job, as well as Dr. Buttar, exposing the fraudulent garbage of the vaccines, this virus, the recommendations by the CDC of wearing the mask, and the idiocy of the social distancing, and how real people have been censored who are epidemiologists who said this is insanity, right? And then, of course, the models funded by Gates at that, the Imperial College of London, and then the IHME out in Seattle or Washington State, also funded by Gates. Their numbers were so far off of, the chart, out of the ballpark, yet those were the two sets of models that Fauci and Birx go rushing into Trump with, as Birx wears her purple outfit and her scarf. Was a purple revolution? Well, no, we had one of them. We had an orange revolution. Maybe this is the black revolution here. But this is clearly a coup, and it is underway. And Sibel Edmonds has been doing some great stuff revealing it. And she said, listen, I have lived through and been involved in coups, and I know one when I see it, and that's what this is. And I mentioned her today. And she's also suggesting that we need to establish basically militias or, organized citizenry to protect ourselves from the idiots. That's not her word. That's my word. But yeah, man, this is not a drill.
Amen. This is not a drill, folks. You heard it here first from Farmer Jones. We're going to have this up before whatever happens in Washington, D.C. happens. We're going to put this up in 3 hours, which would be 7 p.m. my time, 9 p.m. your time. So it'll be right on point, right at the time things are happening. And guys, come over to Farmer Jones, subscribe to his channel, give him some support there. Is there anything you left out that you talked about with George Webb and Jeffrey Prather last night?
Well, yeah, on my channel, I put in a link to George's channel that he did a nice job doing a video editing. It was about an hour and 20-minute convo. But Jeffrey was, DEA, DIA. He did training at the FBI Academy, but he was also psychological warfare. And he was in the game in the government from 1984. And he worked with the CIA and all of these people. And he was saying that this whole thing is it's a PSYOP, right, operation. He said 95% of it. I think it's more than that. And he revealed a lot of interesting stuff about the operations that the government ran in the DEA and busting the cartels down in South America. And, all of the drug running, but the guns, the weapons running, right? And he was saying Benghazi was that. The Fast and Furious discussion, and some very interesting stories from really inside baseball. So it was good stuff. I hope my head doesn't get cut off on the picture here, Diamond. But all right.
You better hope your head doesn't get cut off at the condo.
Yeah, no, we don't want that to happen either. Piglet will protect me. All right. Well, good stuff, man. Listen, I don't want to go too long. I thank you for having me. And,
always a pleasure.
You'll premiere it, and I'll see if I could jump in on the live stream and chit chat. I've got a couple of other interviews I've got to do and people to talk to. So, we'll get it all done. One day at a time, as they say, right?
Indeed. Always a pleasure. Farmer Jones on YouTube. Check him out, guys. Thanks for talking to us tonight. Be safe.
All right.
Ciao.